My name is Ronald Ross, and I've been tasked with being the Master of Ceremonies for this remembrance of my friend and classmate, Sylvan Dove. A few people in the room, there are some in his family who've known him longer. But as they often say, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends. I chose Sylvan Dove, and he chose me. One, I want to thank Jane and Zach for giving me the honor of being the Master of Ceremonies for my friend. Let me take you back, because I told the other people, if you turn to the back of your program, these are the people who are going to speak. And I've told them how long they can speak, so I want to set an example. So what I've said so far doesn't constitute my time. Seriously speaking, I am an educator, translator, a teacher, principal, school superintendent. But more than anything, I was a history teacher. So I'm going to speak from the part of friend and history. Let me take you back to a time, the 1960s. A young man, me, born in Harlem, the guy who was to become my friend, born in Brooklyn. We both end up at Howard University at Cook Hall. It is 1963. I'm not afraid to date myself. This gray or white that you see up here is not Revlon. This is real. One of the people said to me before at the cocktail hour, "You're dating yourself." Every day when people say to me, "How do you feel?" or "How are you?" I'm still above the ground. So it's a good day. I don't believe in this thing called youth. It's wasted on them, although I would love to be 21 again. So here it is, 1963. I go in the dorm. It's Washington, D.C. It is Howard University. Howard sat in the middle of the city, in what was the ghetto. Let me tell you what Washington, D.C. was like. 14th Street was a dividing line. I was an Episcopalian. I attended St. Stephen's Church on Connecticut Avenue in Washington, D.C. It was rich and white, as were most of the Episcopalians. If you walked 2 blocks the other way to 14th Street, it was all black. My pastor, Father Gary, Manhattanville, in Harlem, 126 in Old Broadway, had said, "Ronald, when you get to Howard, you are to go to St. Stephen's." Father Wint, who was at St. Stephen's, decided to have, over the course of my 4 years there, people like Stokely Carmichael and Rat Brown come and speak at St. Stephen's. Half of the white people fled. True. I'm in the dorm the first year. I meet this guy from Brooklyn. His name is Sylvan Dove. Friday nights, we walk up Georgia Avenue, and history must be told. He had enough sense coming from Brooklyn, and me from Harlem and Northern Virginia. See, because I'm originally from Harlem, but when my parents divorced, my mother moved about 30 miles from Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia. Warrington, Virginia. Totally segregated town. I went to a segregated school. And on the 30th of May, I would return to New York, where, quote, for the most part, it was a whole different thing from a segregation thing. Although you could walk across Pleasant Avenue and the Italians would beat you up, or you could go to a certain part of Spanish Harlem and it was different, but it was not the segregation of the South. And I would see that every summer and then have to return there. So now at 63, I'm on the 2nd floor at Cook Hall, and this guy who says he's from Brooklyn, and we immediately begin to bond together at Sylvan. And we see what's going on. It was a different Howard, it was a different school. It was a different time. We sat there. Sylvan came out a year ahead of me in 66. I came out in 67. So since he's dead, I can put it on him rather than me. Lyndon Johnson was to be the guest speaker that Saturday for graduation. And on Thursday night, the speaker stand rose up in fire and burned. And the president called up on Friday and said, I'm not coming. They had 24 hours to find a guest speaker. It is still one of the unsolved crimes in Washington, D.C. I think it was scientific. Washington is hot in the summer, and it must have been spontaneous combustion. We'll leave it at that. Sylvan and I, during that time, walking up Georgia Avenue on Friday nights, going to the Kenyon to have beer. But do not drink too much beer, because on the 5 blocks walking back to the Cook Hall, the local sport at the time was the neighborhood kids would beat anybody who had anything that looked like blue and white. They were called block boys, and their favorite sport was to beat up Howard students. Yes. But he being from Brooklyn and me being from Harlem, we did not have to take a course in self-defense. One, we never wore blue and white. We blended in with the crowd. And just one quick remembrance. It was great in the 60s. We were both friends with a guy. Some of you are old enough to remember Donnie Hathaway. Donnie was from Chicago, and he was dressed in blue and white. And Sylvan says that, Ron, I can't believe you did this coming from Howard. I'm standing at the bus stop, dressed in non-blue and white. I noticed that there are about 8 what we call block boys coming up the street. Donnie turns the corner from Cook Hall with his little Howard cap on in the H and his blue and white sweater. And I said, this is not going to go well. The 8 block boys beat the crap out of him. I got on the bus. They said at the door, why did you leave him? It is better for 1 to be beaten than 2. But some years later, we were at the Apollo Theater, and by then Donnie had become quite famous. To be able to sit in the audience and have him stop in the middle of a show and say, hey, see that guy over there standing up, Ron Ross? That's the guy who let me get into on Georgia Avenue. That's the kind of person he was. And just like Donnie was like that, I say that to sit for what I'm about to say. That was Sylvan Dove. Sylvan Dove would help out anybody for anything. Fast forward, we graduate, he goes his way, I go mine. 20 years later, I'm a principal in New York City. I'm meeting with Citibank, and I'm deciding that I want to work with some of the kids who the city school system has passed by, and what can we do? There's an organization in the city called The Door, and it opens in the evening for anyone up to the age of 21. They provide medical services, they provide legal services, they provide educational services, they provide anything for a teenager that they need to make life successful. And with the aid of the president of the City Corp Foundation, we decided to put a high school in that building during the day. And those students immediately after school would have nowhere that they had to go. They would be right there in the door. And they would get the free services, legal, medical, social, educational, whatever they needed. I get on the elevator the first day as principal. I'm down there early. This guy steps on the elevator, Sylvan Dove. He says, what the hell are you doing here? I said, what the hell are you doing here? I'm the principal. He says, I'm the fundraiser for The Door. By the time we get up to my office, we're talking that morning. He says, what are you doing? He tells me he's married to this woman named Jane. I said, hey, I'm married to a woman named Cynthia. He said, you got to come up. He said, I live up in Westchester County. I said, oh my goodness, where? He says, South Salem. You got to come up there for the weekend. Cynthia and I drive up, we meet Jane and Sylvan. On the way back, my wife said, you know, if we ever left New York, I'd love to live up there. They invite us back up again. You know what? Now this is real Sylvan. Oh, you're going to live up here? Let me introduce you. He gets the real estate agent. The car is broken down. He gets the guy, Howard, to wait on the car. And because of Sylvan and Jane, we're still living in South Salem now. So we're done. Sylvan was always the fixer. No matter what you said to him, Sylvan knew somebody who could help you. And Sylvan was never, it was never a quid pro quo. With him, it was just, hey, you need something, you're into what? Oh, I know so-and-so who knows so-and-so who might help you. We have been that way. We both are totally proud of the fact that we were at Howard in the 60s, that we truly represented Howard. Howard has a motto, Veritas et Utilitas. It translated truth and utility, but some people translate the utilitas as meaning service. Sylvan represented Howard at its extreme core of what it meant to be a Howardout, a real person, because he was about service. He was about service to others. Right up to his last week before he passed, he and I were sitting talking about having Anita, who was sitting over at the table. I'm not going to embarrass her. He had worked with her husband right up until his death. He had decided that as an educator, I needed to meet Anita, well, because she was going to do something to help kids, and I could be the one to help her. That was Sylvan. That was who he was. I will not share with you the 40 or 50 years I've known this man, except to say that he kept me from becoming bitter. He kept me, made me remember what a true friend was. Doing good and expecting nothing in return. To watch my friend in the last year and a half of the hundreds of people he had helped, who somehow turned a distant memory. I won't go into that because this is a time of celebration. But I will say to you, that was a truly remarkable guy. I thank Howard University putting him on my floor, making him my friend, and making me someone proud to live in South Salem. Sylvan, thank you. Let's start with the family. So the first person to speak to you will be Alan Blackwell. Alan, the mic is yours.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I had to find words and summarize those words in a way to not get emotional, because I loved him very much. So I'm going to read from something, and I apologize for reading these written words, but it is. Hello, everyone. My name is Alan Blackwell. I'm Sylvan's nephew. I am honored to speak on behalf of the Brooklyn family about my uncle. Sylvan was born and raised in the best part of Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant. We had similar lives and were very close. Both raised by strong women who loved us both enough for two parents. Both overcome the odds of growing up without a father present, and both eventually raised wonderful and incredible families. Sylvan's sister Marie, my mother, was an outstanding woman who filled my heart with love. And when we lost her at a young age to cancer, Sylvan called me, visited me, and allowed and supported me while I mourned. He was an outstanding man in that way. He supported all of us, I'm sure, and we all have our own unique stories. Sylvan, Jane, and Jay, kept me whole during that period of time of mourning. And again, I'd call him and say, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself. I became a recluse for a year. I was depressed, and he would just say, nephew, it'll be fine. You're strong. You'll make it. So, to the story and to echo what Ron said, he was an incredible man in that manner, and that he always supported, knew what you needed when you needed it before you needed it. Sylvan's mother, Ethel, my aunts, all provided the love and discipline he needed to achieve his goals, find the love of his life, and forge a successful life. Sylvan became my model of what a man could and should be. Synonyms like a good man, an honest man, a class act, only serve as short form examples of how he touched everyone and everyone's life in this room and everyone he met. He was the kind of man, and by kind of man I mean the kind of father that passionately loves and provides for his family, Jane and Zach, the kind of brother that helps his sister in times of need, my mother, the kind of uncle that nurtures his nephew after losing 2 parents and 1 passing, myself, the kind of son that cares for his ailing mother, my grandmother when she had Alzheimer's, the kind of man that forgives an aging father for his shortcomings. He was forgiving, loving, kind, charming. For over 40 years, Sylvan and Jane provided us all a gift by opening up their home to family and friends so we could stay connected, celebrate our lives, celebrate each other, sometimes grieve, and love one another. He took pride in being the patriarch of the family. He always broke out the photo albums showing who he knew, what family member was here, what family member wasn't, reminding us all that we had a proud past and a hopeful future. I will always remember his smile, his laugh, his sarcasm, his abundant intellect, his kindness, his love, his haircuts, and of course, his sangria. Until we meet again, Uncle Sylvan, I love you, we love you, and please kiss my mother for me. Thank you.
Sylvan, then you know this is right on his side. That's how I say this. Hey, you know he's smiling on that one. Those of you who know Sylvan, the next, as you can see by your program, Cecil Foster, a lifelong friend. But I should say before he came up here, Sylvan was always proud of 2 things. Graduating from Howard, being a Howardite, and telling you when things were down, put on your big boy pants. But if you want to know how we suffered, he loved the Knicks, we loved the Knicks. He loved the Nets, we loved the Nets. He loved the Jets, we loved the Nets. But before you say it, I would just like to remind you that 2 Saturdays ago, the greatest event in college football history happened. And Lord knows Sylvan is smiling. We went out to UNLV in Las Vegas. We were 45-point underdogs. As ESPN said, the greatest upset in college sports history. Howard University beat a Division I team. And if you had laid a $100 bet, you got back 55 grand. The bookies took it off of the sports. Hey, Sylvan, it happened. The real HU, not the one up there in Cambridge, the real HU. Cecil Foster, friend.
Is there a way to put some more light up there? I'm 73. As Alan said, he was going to read his remarks. I'm going to read mine also, but right now. Good.
A glass of wine. A glass of wine help?
Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You got a lot of light.
As I read my remarks today, as you see, we had some music introducing me, and we thought that was a great way to make this whole thing work. We're here to celebrate the 73 years Sylvan F. Dove Jr. spent with us.
And as far as I'm concerned, glad I got the chance to sing.
During the December 2003 Christmas holiday season, and consistent with the spirit of celebration, Sylvan and a group of his friends met for lunch at the Palm 2 restaurant in Manhattan to celebrate the season. Since that lunch in 2003, the group has met 14 times. Each year at Christmas, at the same table, at the same restaurant, to celebrate their friendship. One year, Sylvan brought ties for each of the attendees from the Guiding Eyes, one of the operations that he raised money for to celebrate the season. And each year we took a picture of the group to document the day. Following several pictures having been taken, Sylvan gathered all the pictures together, made a composite, so we would have all the pictures together on one offering. This experience is brought to your attention for, in a way, the gathering of the 13 individuals is a measure of who Sylvan was. The group is diverse racially, economically, professionally, and religiously. It is a reflection of Sylvan's many interests, as well as his gift of making everyone and anyone comfortable with him. Celebration of life. Those words are front and center in Jane and Zach's invitation for us today. When I think of the word celebrate, a couple of images come to mind. One in the form of a particular song. Close your eyes and visualize the following. I distinctly remember Sylvan at a Thanksgiving event in 1967 or so, dancing on a table in a ballroom. Many of the folks here tonight or this afternoon were there. The banquet room was full of folks, but Sylvan, of course, was initiating how to have a good time, and Shotgun was the song of the day. As you all will or should have known, Sylvan knew how to have a good time, knew how to stay positive, and knew how to embrace friendship, never asking more than he was willing to give. That is an image I see when I construct a mental snapshot of Sylvan. Linda and I last saw Sylvan and Jane together this past October as they visited with us outside of our home in Philadelphia. At the time, front and center in our minds was the much anticipated November presidential election. The four of us, along with most of America outside of the Electoral College, were mistakenly convinced that Hillary Clinton would become president. And as always, to have as one of the preeminent sources of information, Sylvan brought with him a copy of the New York Post. Sylvan loved reading the New York Post. And by the way, for those of you who missed the announcement, Sylvan in 2016 was recognized by the Guinness Book of Records for having set an all-time world indoor record for having purchased the New York Post 3,604 consecutive days. As Jane planned this day, she asked me to say a few words, and as I prepared my remarks this afternoon, I considered a number of approaches. I reflected on much, including a funeral service I recently attended for the father of a friend of my son. During the course of the service, and when offering remarks, one of the sons of the deceased described how his family reminded him of the storyline and the characters of the sitcom Everyone Loves Raymond. The young man speaking was able to connect all the principal people in his family with specific characters in the sitcom. As I sat there listening, I said, is this a way to present Sylvan? What program, if any, could I use to parallel Sylvan's life? What traits in the show should I be looking for that would sync with Sylvan? When you think of an individual, any individual, you can identify specific personality traits or an image of something that stood out about the person. For example, take Louetta Farr, who assisted Jane tonight. Incredible energy. Lou Schweitzer, astonishing achievement, heightened by class and taste, and an old nickname, Limo Lou. Waldo Faulkner, extended conversation. And as an aside, Jane had considered having Waldo speak today, but the program was only 3 hours. Richard Gilmano, music savant. To me, the traits associated with Sylvan are possessing a certain calm and gentleness, an accomplished fundraiser, having perfected the ability to make the quote-unquote ask at the right moment, an animal lover of the first order, and an unabiding commitment to reading the New York Post every day. As I reviewed television programs, the following shows came to mind. 1, In Living Color, quite entertaining and groundbreaking, but upon further examination, I felt it was not the right fit. There was no Bob the Fireman, nor an ugly girl in Sylvan's immediate group, nor was there a Dick and detective in Sylvan's family. What about Blackish? No, not a fit either. The Jeffersons, not so much. After considerable research, I could not find any program that got even close. Why is that? Over the years, Sylvan's friends and acquaintances have ranged from hoods off the block in Brooklyn to members of the Rockefeller family, to friendships far and near, including but not limited to his neighbors in the community he and Jane have resided in here in South Salem for over 40 years. Sylvan had the ability to connect with people of all persuasions and all backgrounds. His relationships were long and deep. Amongst others, Sylvan had many friends, some open quotes connected, or close quotes, some not, residing in Little Italy. And while to my knowledge, Sylvan was not a made man, he certainly was welcomed by the quote-unquote friends, many of whom were replicated in The Sopranos. Sylvan had all of the requisite credentials to be a made man, with one minor but critical exception. He was not Sicilian. To put in perspective where Sylvan came from and his transformation in life, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn in the late 40s and into the 50s and 60s, perhaps the following will give you some insight into Sylvan and the circumstances influencing his life that you might not have been aware of. Sylvan and I both grew up in the aforementioned 40s, 50s, and 60s in the Bedford-Stuyvesant section of Brooklyn. Sylvan, with his extended family at 310 Lewis Avenue, me with my extended family, lived just a few blocks away at 334 Green Avenue. While we were separated by only a few blocks, we were worlds apart because of the territorial boundaries that existed and that were enforced by gangs. To name a few, the gangs included the El Quintos, the Chaplains, and the Green Avenue Stompers, each of whom controlled various blocks. My church, unfortunately, was not in my immediate neighborhood, but was located in Sylvan's. But that made no difference. Every Wednesday when I went for my confirmation lessons, went to my church, outside my block, I was terrorized by roaming groups of young men who, when they saw someone who did not live on that block, made it clear they were not welcome, to say the least. It was zip knives, knives, straight razors, and bats. And one particular day, as I returned home from my religious instruction, I entered the house crying after having been in a fight. My dad inquired about what had transpired, and after listening to what had happened, it caused my upset. He instructed me to go back outside by myself, pick up a stick or a brick and defend myself. As Sylvan and I navigated through life in our early years, this is an example of the backdrop. Now looking positively at those years, the skills, for lack of a better term, that we acquired included avoiding detection and then having to defend ourselves. That served me well during my time spent on active duty in the Marine Corps, and specifically in Vietnam. The Sylvan had too honed his survival skills and determination to structure a successful and civilized life. As life would have it, and over the years, many enjoyable hours were spent in Sylvan in manifest ways. Pick-up basketball games, parties, every borough in New York, politics, local and statewide, and to say the least, there were a lot of capers. Most before Sylvan met Jane in the mid-1960s, for Jane brought greater stability to his life. What do you remember about a friend? My first professional shoe shine was with Sylvan. It was 1966 and it cost a quarter. And it was paid for by a local Brooklyn hustler who was always dressed in the nines, black suit, freshly pressed suit, a crisp white shirt, fashionable tie, wearing Stacy Adams shoes with white stitching around the sole, and best of all, with the unforgettable name Garfield Bogle. In the late 1960s, Sylvan and I discovered or were introduced to a bar located in Manhattan at 155th Street and Broadway called Allen's Alley. Waldo Faulkner and Charlie Williams remember the bar well. Did anyone live close to that address? No. So why travel all the way to that location? Quite simply, it was a 5-for-1. In other words, when you ordered or purchased one drink, they give you 5. The bartender would line up 5 shot glasses and pour 5 shot glasses. Each round cost $1.25. Most economic. Moving along, what else does one remember about a friend? Spring of 1971, I had just recently been released from active duty in the Marine Corps. Shortly thereafter, the Doves and the Forces decided to go to dinner in Greenwich Village. As we drove down McDougal Street, a fire truck was proceeding directly ahead of us, and at a point in time it stopped. Backup lights came on, and the truck proceeded to back up as it returned to the firehouse. As this occurred, a fireman stood in front of our car to ensure I did not proceed. After a few minutes, and while the fire truck continued to maneuver, one of the firemen directing traffic decided to sit on the hood of my car. Not a good idea. Not appreciating the liberty taken by the fireman, I put the car in gear, accelerated a bit, and stopped short enough so the fireman lost his balance and fell off the car. After getting up, the fireman came to the driver's window to confront me. While talking with me, and to my total surprise, he proceeded to punch me in the face. At the time I was struck, I did not know that Sylvan had rolled down the window in the back seat and had punched the fireman in his face first. An action by Bed-Stuy rules considered as an appropriate response to taking the liberty of sitting on the car uninvited. So in response to this confrontation, Sylvan and I did what any person who grew up in Bed-Stuy would do. We exited the vehicle. Sylvan gets out first, as I put the car in neutral and engaged the emergency brake. By that time, I see Sylvan chasing the fireman down the street into the firehouse. Within seconds, and as I finally got out of the car, I see Sylvan running back to the car. With several firemen chasing him, each wielding an axe or something. As some wise person once said, all's well that ends well. And I don't recall how we got out of that crisis. And maybe Jane can remember because she was the only other person in the room who was there with me, but it was quite an evening. On other fronts, as some of you may recall, Sylvan, consistent with his love of horses, totally and fully enjoyed thoroughbred horse racing. In 1971, at the third leg of the Triple Crown, I fondly recall cheering on a lawn shot pay catcher at the Belmont Stakes. We took our winnings and went to City Island for a grand dinner. In 1973, we again traveled to Belmont Park, and that year watched Secretariat win the Belmont by 31 lengths and become the first Triple Crown winner since 1936. Travel too was of interest to Sylvan, and in between those two great Belmont races and other events, our respective families traveled to, amongst other places, Barbados and the British West Indies. In 1973, a landmark occasion occurred in the lives of Sylvan and Jane when they purchased their home on Elmwood Road in South Salem. They purchased the property from a woman who also raised German Shepherds, and I proudly represented the Doves at the closing for a small fee. Your home would become the hub for many events, and commencing in 1974 or so, and for several years thereafter, Sylvan and Jane's home was a site annually for watching the Super Bowl.
Yes.
The event was appropriately named the Soul Bowl, and to gain admission, guests had to bring a dish: ribs, fried chicken, page nuggets, collard greens, or any other offering that qualified that might be found at Sylvia's Wells or some other authentic soul food restaurant. Besides Sylvan, who do you know who, as a young boy growing up in an economically depressed neighborhood in Brooklyn, had amongst other dreams the following: a dream of raising champion show dogs, a dream of riding his own horse on his own property, a dream of using his enormous interpersonal skills to raise considerable sums of money for multiple causes, a list too long to recite, and who in fact realized those dreams. To further amplify, when I say riding your own horse on your own property, I called to mind a photograph I took of Jane and Sylvan on a warm summer afternoon, sitting in front of their home in South Salem, enjoying a glass of wine, when one of their horses, Max, casually walked over, nuzzles between Jane and Sylvan, and drinks from Sylvan's wine glass. Very civilized, to say the least. Indeed, Bed-Stuy was a long memory away in Sylvan's rearview mirror. Sylvan had numerous and varied other interests, but no interest more important than his wife Jane, his son Zach, his extended family, his friends, and his animal family. Again, as I anticipated today's gathering, I reflected on a life well-lived, not perfect, not without disappointment, but one well-lived. Said simply, when you dream of what if, and you achieve what if, as Sylvan did, your life has indeed been well-lived.
Thank you. They say 6 degrees of separation. Cecil, Cynthia and I were at the Belmont at 63. We just hadn't met Sylvan and Jane again yet. We were there to see Secretariat. I do want to take a moment before the next person comes up and his many interests. One of the things, I've grown up in Virginia, not in Harlem, with German Shepherds. And when I said to Sylvan I'd had a German Shepherd, he immediately introduced me to a guy named Joe Bahari. If you know anything about the AKC, Joe Bahari, I still think, even though the Firestone woman won at Westminster that year, Joe had the best German Shepherds in the country. And again, it's Sylvan, knowing everybody, said, I'll introduce you to Joe. He took me over there. I saw this little puppy, and he asked me if I was going to show him. I said, no, I just wanted him for a pet. And Sylvan said, okay, then take the runt. You'll save $400 or $500. So a couple $1,000, we got the runt of the litter, following Sylvan's advice. I had to join the New Jersey German Shepherd Dog Club, and every Tuesday for a year and a half, for 18 months, I had to go every Tuesday and take my dog beer. But to show you how good Sylvan was, within 6 months, Joe Bahari wanted to buy my dog back, and that was the price I paid. The runt turned out to be the prize of the litter. And as my wife Cynthia will tell you, we've had dogs, but none better than Jack. And again, from Sylvan, he knew everything about everybody. at what you needed at the time. I've always had a dog, mainly German Shepherds, but Jack has a special place in our heart. FedEx will tell you, because if a package that came to South Salem in our driveway and it had Fragile on it, they opened the door and pitched it out. Jack has been dead for over 10 or 12 years, and UPS still pumped it out of the truck. We've had another German Shepherd since then, Buddy, who is also going to his rest, and we now have an Airedale who's living off the reputation that Jack had. But there's so much when I listened to what Cecil was saying about Sylvan, our lives crossed even when we didn't know it. We were there watching Secretariat do it. So I knew we would come back to each other. I just didn't know when. Next, what can I say except to say, for God forbid, Stein, let her tell you about it. Jennifer Rockefeller Nelson.
So thank you. Just a sec. Sorry. I'm good.
Oh, you're good.
It's just I'm emotional. I'll get it together. So, Jane and Zach, I know we stepped out for a second, but thank you for the invitation. I have a few things to say. I've made some notes. I can feel so much beauty in this room. So I met Sylvan in 1986. I was 21. I was very young and naive. I had grown up in New York and then I'd gone off to college. And then I moved to New York City because that's what a lot of people do when they're 21 and they're trying to figure out how to lay those stepping stones. And I walked into a cocktail party one night and there was this tall, beautiful, substantial man talking about German Shepherds. And I didn't know a single person in the room. I was shy, which is one of the reasons it's hard for me to stand in front of all of you. And so I was like, oh, someone's talking about something I know about and love, which are German Shepherds. That was one of many things. My mother had one of those incredible creatures for many, many years. And the rest is history. We just absolutely bonded that night and became instant friends. I haven't. Obviously, I haven't had enough time to process the reality that I don't get to see him again. But I do believe that at the same time, he's here. And that really helps me. And when I met Sylvan, I didn't realize it was a 3-for-1 because I gained the friendship of Jane and Zach. And so that will stay strong. If you want to know what kind of a man Sylvan was, none of us need to because we all knew him. But all you have to do is look at Zach and look at the if you can love someone because they're compassionate, Sylvan was easy to love. If you can love them because they're intelligent or engaging or funny, he was easy to love. If you can love somebody because they're loyal, he was easy to love. We connected over everything from human rights to animal rights. I do environmental work full-time and focus on endangered species, and that was something we talked about endlessly. We could never carve out enough time to talk about politics. That was always a blast. I grew up in New York, but I moved to Maine 29 years ago, and when I met Sylvan and Jane, I also found out that they used to come to Maine and continued to come to Maine for decades. So every summer we had our date, and Jane and I and Zach still had it this summer, and we still managed to get to politics at some point. So that's always been so special. I appreciated him for being an incredible mentor and a really good listener. He was truly one of my teachers. So I'll just close with this. There's a passage that's always brought me a lot of comfort, and I can email it to any of you, or you could probably find it online. It's by John Mansfield, or Macefield, I should say, but I thought I'd read it to you because it's always helped me. It says, I'm standing upon the seashore. A ship at my side spreads her white sails to the morning breeze and starts for the blue ocean. She is an object of beauty and strength, and I stand and watch her until, at length, she hangs like a speck of white cloud just where the sea and sky come down to mingle with each other. Then someone at my side says, "There, she's gone." Gone where? Gone from sight. That is all. She's just as large in mast and hull and spar as she was when she left my side, and just as able to bear her load of living freight to the place of destination. Her diminished size is not in me, not in her. And just at the moment when someone at my side says, "There, she's gone," there are other eyes watching her coming, and other voices ready to take up the glad shout, "There she comes." He always introduced me as his sister, and I'll miss my brother.
Horses, German shepherds, fighting firemen, suffering with the Mets, suffering with the Jets. And we know what he would be saying about the tweets in Alabama. We would be watching football today and commenting on the two nuts who are taking the world's attention, one in North Korea and one in Washington. Sylvan may have bought the Post, but I can tell you that he was to the left of the New York Times. We remember the Post back when it was a liberal newspaper. It was owned by a woman and had great writers, but that's for another day and another time. One more friend, a lifelong friend, Steve Poole, to the podium, please.
Sylvan and I started life together. And when Jane asked me to say something, I started to think and write notes. And then all of the images just sort of started to rush by. And I tried to reach in for one. but they came too fast and we were too many. We were born within a year of each other. And so we're going to fast forward to being 8 or 9. We lived in Sylvan's backyard, which was a door away from our house. And as all 8 or 9-year-olds do, we discovered, or we decided that there was gold in the backyard. And what would an 8 or 9-year-old do once they've assayed that there's gold? Well, we decided to dig for it. So one summer we began digging. The digging got hard, so what's next? Well, if you're smart enough to know there's gold and you're going to tunnel for it, you get someone else to do the digging, which was Marie, his sister. She'd been a little younger than both of us. So we started digging or started supervising. And she quit. And we had a substantial pile of rocks. So, like most prospectors, we fell out over who owned what. And our pile of rocks became missiles and we started throwing them. With him hitting me in the head. Blood was drawn. The revenge is in order. So we move forward and he has a tonsillectomy. I pay a condolence call. We're now 11 years old. He wants some ice cream. I go for ice cream. But I also get him a small bag of peanuts, which I give him first. So we collected ties, and he was a much better dresser, much more. We bought the last 2 ties together when I was 30. Which was the last ties we had. No more goals.
Next speaker is Sylvan. Alex, I hope I got it right this time.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Zach and Sylvan's friends. My wife and I moved to South Salem in November of 1980, and I commuted to the city out of Katona. It was during that commute one day that I first met Sylvan. God works in mysterious ways. The last time I saw Sylvan was at Stop and Shop, just a couple of weeks before he passed. We were joking about our wives sending us to shopping while we were yucking it up about sports, politics, and our lives. There are only a handful of people who come into your world and touch your life in a dramatic fashion. Some of these are just flickers of light during a long life, while others are consistent glow for years. For me, Sylvan was my consistent glow. He was my friend for close to 37 years. We hit it off immediately. I remember feeling so comfortable around him, I felt like I could turn to him any time for friendship and support. As I said, that friendship and support continued for the next 37 years. We both worked at jobs in the city. We raised our families together in South Salem. We shared some wonderful times together, babies' christenings, and their beloved Sebago Lake vacation in Maine, Jane's ribs, and the time we were going to write a book called The Manly Men's Guide, so that we could share our secrets of being manly men with other men. I will never forget those times. I can honestly say that there are only a few people who have walked into my life and changed it forever. My wife, my daughter, Sylvan, and Jane. He gave me my first opportunity to open up to somebody. He taught me that life is short and that the most important part of life is the people in it. I will always be grateful for his teachings forever. To his family, Jane and Zach, I love you as if you were my own. In many ways, you are. I want you to know that Jane, that Dale, Nicole, and I will always be there for you in difficult time and beyond. Well, by the way, did I ever tell you how we actually met? One day, coming off the train at Katona, I couldn't get my station car started. And after getting the service station to basically drag it away, I decided to thumb my way home. A bunch of cars passed me by until this lime green, fake wood paneled station wagon and asked me where I was headed. I replied, South Salem. He said, today is your lucky day. So right was Sylvan. And as Jane would remind me, pointed out, that the only guy willing to stop and lend a hand was the only black guy in South Salem. Sylvan, I love you. I miss you. Your family's in good hands. You have graced my life more than you ever know. God bless.
We're just about near the end of the program. I'm going to, one of Sylvan's many passions or loves, things that he was interested in, besides the organizations that you read about there in the bulletin, was the Omega Psi Phi fraternity, which started at Howard University, the Alpha chapter. I'm asking Steve Smith to come forward. Steve in the room? Oh, there it is. Peripheral vision gets shot when you get by.
Good afternoon, everybody. Ron, like everybody else, has a problem pronouncing my last name. Think of the ball player, and for those of you who are old enough, think of the beer. Name is Schmidt. I listened to all the stories and all the memories, and strangely enough, I'm the baby of the group. I've known of Sylvan for a number of years, but I probably met him maybe 3 years ago. He was a good friend, always helpful. I can tell Jane that when I first met him, it was at one of the annual 4th of July parties. And I can remember Jane calling me and asking me just to bring some beer. That's how Sylvan was. He was that type of person. In fact, the last memory I had of him was he was planning this year's party. And last year I was fortunate enough to bring my father, who will be 93 in February. And Sylvan's last words to me was, well, let's plan a party at the barbecue. Thank you.
Before we close, I just want to say you're all welcome to stay and continue to talk. What I would say in closing, was directed the week before he died. We were doing not even weekly, but just every so often at the Horse and Hound, which is a local place here. You know, we go and sit on the bar and discuss what is going on. So my closing, it's only to two people. It's to Jane and Zach. Your husband and your father spoke with me intimately, and what I can't say publicly. Jane, you were the love of his life. And Zach, no father was more proud of his son than he is of you. Some of you may not know it, those of your family or friends do. A couple of years ago, Zach decided that he wanted to go and start growing hops with his girlfriend at the time. And Jane and Sylvan, oh my God. Graduating from college, going to work, doing this. And again at the Horse and Hound, and over at his house. I came over and we talked out in the yard. And I watched Zach grow because I remember when he was in Metaporn, they had a problem there. At that time, like they said, when he helped you, and Jane reminded you he was the only black guy there, you have no idea what it was like when Zach was little, being a black person in Metaporn. You know, they weren't used. We were like foreigners from another planet. But he made his way through the system there in spite of it. And I remember saying to Sylvan, you know, you told me too many times, you know, what if? What if Zach gets to the point at 40 or 50 and he looks back on it and he said, what if I had taken a chance on growing these hops? I said, you know, by the way, people drink beer. It's a simple thing. It's made out of water, hops, and yeast. And this craft market, he's doing this locally. There's got to be some brewmaster out there who, rather than get hops from Germany, would love to get them from upstate New York. It's local. It's the economy. The last time, a week or so before he died, we were sitting in the Horse and Hound. And Zach, I think part of the reason he died, this is between you and me, his heart was bursting with pride for you. That's how he died. He loved his son. He could not have been prouder. So if you drink beer, think of Zach. And if you don't drink beer, think of Zach. So Zach, here's to you. Jane, he's smiling, he's happy. Look at all that has happened. He has all of you here, and Howard University beat you in LV. The only sad thing is the New York Post didn't put it on the back page, because that's where Sylvan read. He read from the back page to the front. And we would be here talking about, we're hoping that they're demonstrating against that nut in the White House. Thank you.